Revelation 2564. From the 28th of November 1942. Redemption period nears end. Humanity will fall into ever greater hardship because the time given to the spiritual for redemption is pressing. An accelerated process of development must be possible, which is promoted by excessive suffering and misery. Time is approaching its end, and there are still countless people who have no spiritual striving whatsoever and therefore go through earthly life completely useless. They must, so to speak, be urged by external circumstances to seriously think about earthly life, which they would never do if life passed them by in uniformity and without suffering and hardship. As long as they don't make contact with the spiritual world through heartfelt prayer, through calling upon spiritual strength, the spiritual success of their embodiment on earth is doubtful, or earthly life would only have to be a continued activity of love, but then the human being is also unconsciously in contact with the spiritual world. The time of redemption of the spiritual is approaching its end. The human being cannot comprehend what this means, and yet he should be informed of it so that he will understand the cause and purpose of the great adversity which God is allowing to come upon earth. This redemption period covered an infinitely long time and again the spiritual was offered the opportunity to develop upwards. But God's wisdom also set a limit to this redemption period, but also increases the number and kind of development possibilities so that the still immature spiritual can come to its last maturity before the redemption period is over. And as soon as the spiritual does not resist, it can reach the last stage of development. But their will of this spiritual substance is weak, and it fails if it is not influenced in a way which urges it to make its own decision. Earthly suffering is intended to exert such an influence on the spiritual being, and therefore God will not leave this last possibility untried in order to help the spiritual being, which without it would not benefit from the embodiment as a human being. Earthly life passes, but with it also the possibility that the spiritual in the human being liberates itself. On earth it can still do this of its own strength. But as soon as earthly life is over, the spiritual, the soul, lacks strength, and it is in greatest danger to develop retrogressively, which results in eternities of being bound again. In contrast, the greatest suffering on earth can be called minor, and therefore people should take it upon themselves because it is the only way to spare the soul the torments of the beyond, which are far greater and last for eternities. Because it is more difficult to attain spiritual freedom in the beyond. For this is certain. Nothing will come upon humanity that is not based on God's love and requires God's wisdom. And therefore even the coming exceedingly great suffering must be regarded as a proof of God's love. As a last resort for the redemption of the spiritual, which is in danger of losing itself completely. Amen.